I needed to get the word out, so I'd craft an ad and I would put that out there into the market. I had a very catchy headline. I think back then it said, "Accelerate Your Career." A very active, ambitious title for someone who could sell. And then it featured a picture of the absolute hottest car at the time. It emphasized the prestige of working for Mercedes-Benz and the opportunities for growth and the supportive working environment that we were offering. It was a huge success. I had 150 people apply. Why? Because it wasn't just about a job. It was about the opportunity to be part of something bigger, something aspirational, something exciting. And this is critical when you're advertising for people. You're not just advertising a job, you're advertising the next phase in their life. James Schramko here. Welcome to episode 1087, Mastering the Art of Hiring. I'm going to be sharing with you some experience I had from my Mercedes-Benz dealership days and how that relates to online success. So if we go back in time a little bit, imagine walking into a failing Mercedes-Benz dealership, tasked with the monumental challenge of turning it around. The dealership was losing money, staff were leaving in droves, the team's morale was an absolute low. And as the new general manager, I was responsible for rebuilding the team from the ground up, a task that would not only save the dealership, but also lay the foundation for my approach to hiring and team building that I've refined over 2 decades and I've brought to many of my mentees. So in today's episode, I'm going to share that journey of how I transformed the struggling dealership into a top performer and how those lessons have carried over into building successful online businesses. It's not really just about hiring, it's about creating a culture where people thrive and want to stay. And it all starts with getting the right people on board. So the first big challenge I had was having to rebuild from the ground up. When I stepped into that general manager role at a Mercedes-Benz dealership, the situation was pretty bad. It had over 70 staff members and the whole business needed an overhaul, like every level of management. Departments like service, parts, finance, sales, and marketing were in complete disarray. And the staff was turning over at a ridiculous rate. I mean, the car industry, it's something like 100% per year for salespeople. It was just killing morale and productivity. I mean, it's kind of like being on the Death Star. My first task was to rebuild this team. And it wasn't about just filling in vacant positions. I knew I was actually going to have to replace a lot of the people who were still there. I had to find the right people who could help turn that business around, not just phone it in or do the job. They needed to be at a more deep level, motivated to grow this business. And I knew if I could assemble that team that had skills and aligned with the dealership's goals, then we could actually make an impact. But it wasn't the first time I'd done this. So I'd already been through an enormous amount of training with Mercedes-Benz. They had this thing called the Dealer Management Development Program, which really was a turning point in my career. I was about 29 years old when I went through that. It was a very high cost live-in course over 2 separate occasions, and it was designed for future leaders in the Mercedes-Benz network. And it provided me with the tools and the knowledge I needed to succeed in such a difficult environment. So I went off to that dealer management program. It was about 2001, and I was selected as an up-and-coming leader. And it was this pivotal moment in my career. It was intense. It was like putting a university education into just a few weeks. They hired the best people they possibly could to come and train us. We covered everything from financial literacy to peak leadership performance, learning how to manage people, present ideas effectively, and lead a team to success. Ergo, a lot of the things that are missing from highly tuned visionaries in the online world. The training was transformative. It just gave me such a solid foundation in the principles of management and leadership, which I would apply into rebuilding the Mercedes-Benz dealership. And one of the key takeaways from the program was the importance of a structured approach to hiring and training. It wasn't just enough to hire someone who looked good on paper or was a friend of a friend or you had a good feeling about. You needed to dig deeper. You needed to look for evidence of their capabilities and ensure they were the right fit for the team. I guess it's more scientific and structured than a lot of people approach this with. The structured approach was something I applied immediately upon returning to the dealership. Like, I didn't just start hiring people. I created detailed job descriptions. I defined the attributes and skills required for each role and developed a process for screening and selecting candidates. This process was the cornerstone of my success in turning that dealership around. So the systematic approach for crafting the perfect hiring process really paid big dividends. So I would spec the role. So the first step in my hiring process was to define what success looks like for each role. This wasn't just about listing job responsibilities. It was about identifying the key attributes and skills that would make someone successful in that position. So for example, if I was hiring a salesperson, I didn't just want someone who could sell. I wanted someone who could do it with integrity and professionalism, someone who could represent the Mercedes-Benz brand with pride, and who could outgun the other people selling the exact same product just 30 minutes away by car. So I developed this worksheet that listed all the attributes and skills required for each role, and this worksheet became my guide during the hiring process. It's very important that you do this before you sit down next to someone to ask them about their background. Ensuring that I remained focused on finding the right person for the job was critical. And then I would craft an ad that would draw out the right person. I needed to get the word out. And back in those days, it was in a print paper. You'd run an ad on a Saturday job section. These days, of course, there's all these online tools, but the principles still translate. I needed to get the word out, so I'd craft an ad and I would put that out there into the market. I had a very catchy headline, just like all the copywriting that I was learning in my private time. I think back then it said, "Accelerate your career." A very active, ambitious title for someone who could sell. And then it featured a picture of the absolute hottest car at the time. Back then it was the SLK, the one with the folding metal roof. It emphasized the prestige of working for Mercedes-Benz and the opportunities for growth and the supportive working environment that we were offering. It was a huge success. I had 150 people apply. Why? Because it wasn't just about a job. It was about the opportunity to be part of something bigger, something aspirational, something exciting. And this is critical when you're advertising for people. You're not just advertising a job, you're advertising the next phase in their life. The ad spoke directly to the candidates that I wanted to attract, and they were motivated, they were confident, they were eager to succeed. They wanted to be part of something bigger than just doing an hourly wage. Then I'd had to screen the candidates. That's the next phase. So with 150 applicants, I needed a rigorous screening process. I invited 21 of them. After going through all the resumes, I'd sifted out to about 21 to interview over 3 days. And I carefully selected those who aligned with my vision for the dealership. Each interview was structured with specific questions designed to uncover whether the candidate had the right attributes and skills for the role. One of the things that I look for a salesperson was evidence of past success. I wanted to see the candidate had achieved something significant in their previous roles, something that demonstrated their ability to succeed under high pressure, that had a good cultural fit. Did this person align with the values of our dealership? Were they someone who could work well with the rest of the team? It wasn't just about the interview. I involved at least one other person in the decision-making process to get a second perspective. And this was crucial because it helped me ensure that I wasn't making decisions based solely on my gut feeling. Instead, we worked with the facts. We discussed each candidate's strengths and weaknesses before making a final decision. The emotional connection was critical because selling is an emotional game. In fact, I'd say most roles in the business, even if they're a coder or someone who you might think is more black and white, zeros and ones, there's still emotion. And recognizing potential beyond what's on the resume is really the art of interviewing. So one of the most rewarding aspects of hiring is finding someone who may not seem like a perfect fit on paper, but turns out to be a star performer. I remember this guy, his name was Ozell, and he applied for the concierge role at the dealership. And just to put that into layman's terms, that means he would stand on the front driveway and help people park their car and walk them in the front door. That was it. Now, he didn't get that job. He went to interview for that job with the service manager, and the guy didn't hire this guy. And he caught my eye as he was walking out of the dealership dejected. I actually went over to him and I said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" He said, "I went for a job as a concierge, but I didn't get it." And I said, "Well, what have you been doing now?" And he said, "Well, I'm working in a hotel. I do the night shift. I'm a concierge in the hotel." And I said, well, do you have a white shirt? He said, I do. I said, well, you come here on the weekend and let's see how you go. And I brought him on the weekend, and his only job on the weekend was to meet and greet clients and ask them if they'd like a tea or a coffee or get them a glass of water. That was it. And he turned up on time. He looked presentable. He did a fantastic job. And so then I said, why don't you come in for an interview for a sales role? And I offered him a sales cadet role. That meant he wouldn't earn commission, just a base salary. He may not necessarily get to deal with customers by himself, but he would be assisting me as an important assistant to help facilitate the sales process and to learn the role and to get more comfortable in it. He actually sat in my office listening to calls, learning the ropes for months. And he eventually became the number one sales rep in the dealership and later moved up to a management position. And this experience taught me that sometimes the right person for the job isn't immediately obvious. So it's important to look beyond the resume and to see the potential in people. With the right guidance and opportunity, they can exceed all expectations. And if there's one mistake I see people making a lot, that's where they spec out the job description to some impossible standard that the chances of them finding this person are rarer than unicorn poop. So make it a little looser, but look for more behavioral attributes rather than technical competencies. So the results of this are I did have scaling success. I learned that from rebuilding the Mercedes-Benz dealership, we turned it around. Over a number of years, it started making millions of dollars in profit, and it later sold for a fortune. These skills weren't just confined to the automotive industry. I applied these principles when I transitioned into the online world, and where I'd built a solid SEO business that had 38 employees. I had a website development business with 10 employees. And today I manage a very small world-class team that has been with me for up to 15 years. They've all been with me for more than 10 years. So this works over the long haul. And it's actually no coincidence when I look around the Mercedes-Benz dealer network, a lot of the people I hired from scratch who'd never been in the industry are running the places now. And these teams have been able to go way beyond what we thought was possible. And it was the backbone of the business, enabling me to scale and maintain stability and to increase the profitability. And some of the most valuable lessons I've learned are how to reduce churn, because high turnover is really often a sign of a broken hiring process and, of course, terrible leadership. By being meticulous in the selection process, ensuring a good cultural fit and providing a proper training, I've been able to create a stable team that is committed to the success of the business. In fact, the salespeople I was churning out were so good, Mercedes-Benz asked me to train the other sales managers on the recruitment process that I was using, which I'd developed to augment what they trained me in the first place. So it was award-winning. And so as we wrap up today's episode, I want you to think about your own hiring practices. If you're having people leave your business, is it because you put the wrong person in there? Is it because you don't have a good system? And it might be time to rethink your approach. The success of your business really is determined by the level of the team that you bring in. And I know there's a big trend these days, like have a one-person business. In all reality, a lot of the people spouting that probably never went to dealer management training and probably don't know how to hire well. And therefore, they may have created a business around their weakness, which is not having to hire people. But if you don't have people in your business, you're going to be doing everything, and it might not be as enjoyable as it can be with a small team doing almost everything, and you're just doing the bits you want. So don't leave it to chance. This is absolutely a scientific, systematic process that you can bring in to your business. As an example, I recently helped someone to find somewhere to live. They did an application, and when they did an application, the person screening them had such a thorough, systematic process. This is for a rental. They got 3 references for character. They wanted to speak to past employers. They wanted proof of income, proof of cash in bank balance, and they also ran tenancy checks, etc. So a very rigorous process. And I found out that they'd rejected the 3 people prior. So this is a good system that will reduce the chance of a bad tenant. It's the same in your business. If people are leaving all the time or you're struggling to get a good fit, it's go and look in a mirror. It starts with you. Get the practice on board. By the way, if you need help with this, there are resources available. Of course, I'm available to mentor you at jamesschramko.com. There is a great business service called virtualdoo.com. Partner of mine, Lloyd Thompson, runs that. And he gets in there and helps people and systems side of the business for visionaries. So he gets in and finds out who you've got, what systems you've got, and then he starts creating recruitment processes in-house with you. If you need a VA, of course, my wife and I run visionfind.com, and we have the recruitment process down pat. We do all the screening and testing before you ever get the candidate. And of course, I apply all the things I've learnt to matching you up with the right person based on who's likely to succeed. And it comes with a hiring guarantee. That's at visionfind.com. In the next episode, I plan to go through a business diagnostic process, which was also very pivotal in me being able to turn around the dealerships. I started my first business accelerator checklist decades ago. I still use it to this day with my mentees who come on board my program, but it's obviously a much refined version. I'm going to take you through the essence of that in the next episode. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts and questions around recruitment. If you enjoyed today's episode, this one's up at jamesschramko.com or wherever you listen to episodes, Spotify, Apple. It's episode 1087. Thanks for joining me today.
This is James Schramko.